The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. And we do that every week by sharing the stories and advice of those who are rocking it on the other side. And welcome back to ADjunct, the segment of Breaking and Entering where we speak with the best ad educators across the world. The professor in this episode was quoted saying, "If we win the NSAC competition, I will let you all shave my head," end quote. If that doesn't portray passion, maybe the 30 plus years of teaching creative advertising will. Professor Joe Bob Hester is an associate professor at one of the oldest public universities in the United States, where Michael Jordan won a national title his freshman year as well. Yes, it's the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Much like Dean Smith, Roy Williams, and now Hubert Davis, Joe Bob Hester coaches his advertising students to be the best creatives they can be to break in and win in the advertising industry. He mentions the importance of building a wealth of advertising knowledge beyond the standard ad trade publications, which are those ad weeks, ad ages, which we love. He says how current university students, whoever they are, they should look into developing independent studies with their favorite professors. His unique approach and extensive knowledge make him and his episode a must listen. And hey, you can connect with him. If you check out our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod, he lists out his secret resources just for you. And if you message me on Instagram or on LinkedIn, I'll help you connect with him or any of our past guests. Now, on with the show. You're going to love this one. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, that was a high one. I am your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Joe Bob Hester, professor, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How the heck are you doing today? You got some soccer going on, you said?
Yeah, it's a lot of traffic because of this soccer match that's being held at Chapel Hill. So it's really interesting to see all the promotion around it too. You know, they've set up tailgating that's way beyond what we see on college football weekend. So,
interesting. Who's playing? Let the audience know.
Wrexham and Chelsea.
So that means Ryan Reynolds might be in town.
Well, that is the rumor.
And I'm just going to go right into advertising. He runs the Creative Ladder, which is a really great resource. That's a resource for diverse creatives, underrepresented backgrounds, nonprofit. Him, David Greiner, who was a fantastic journalist in the ad trades, and Deanna Dorsey Calloway. So I've interviewed David and Deanna about that, but I haven't had Ryan Reynolds on. So maybe if you can go run outside and find him, we can get something going.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually doing this from Durham. I left Chapel Hill after or before the traffic got too bad because it was really backing up. The stadium seats 51,000. So
beautiful. Yeah. So that's awesome that in the summer, and so that's what we're here to talk about is University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. You live in Durham, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Not too far. How long is the drive over from Durham to UNC?
Driveway to the parking lot is 8.8 miles. So on a good day, it's 15 minutes.
Nice. Durham, tell me about Durham. I've been in Chicago my whole life. What's Durham like?
Oh man, Durham is really cool. It's a real foodie town.
What do you like to eat there?
I didn't realize that when we moved here. I like pretty much everything. I'm one of those chef wannabes in terms of loving to cook. I don't want to work in a restaurant. That work is way too hard. But
sure. You're cooking up ideas, creative ideas.
There you go.
There we go. Kind of a stretch. Okay. So Durham, food town, 8.8 miles, you said, or from Durham to University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill campus. And you've been at UNC now for how long? I'm seeing on the LinkedIn here, but you tell me.
We came in fall of 2001.
Wow.
So
and that's 22 years and 7 months, according to LinkedIn. So you've been there. You're associate professor uh, at UNC in the advertising department. Is that correct?
Well, we don't have an advertising department. We're in the School of Journalism and Media, and we have, under our current organization, basically two sides of the house. We've got the journalism side, and then we've got the strategic communication side, and that's where advertising lives.
So you got the journalism side and Stratcom, strategic communications on the other side. And I'm curious, you've been at other institutions as well. Look, I'm seeing here Texas Tech, you're assistant professor, Southwest Texas State University. You got your PhD at University of Alabama. So tell me about the program structure, because we know journalism, oftentimes advertising will fall into the journalism school or a school of communication. It's not usually in the business school, right, unless you're doing marketing. How does that structure look at University of North Carolina?
That's the way it is. I mean, we're the School of Journalism and Media is in the College of Arts and Sciences. So that's totally separate from the business administration folks. We do get some of their students sometimes as minors in our program. And this is one of the weird things about our program. I shouldn't say weird, but unusual.
Unique.
At most schools in the advertising program, they don't teach a course called marketing because the business school won't let them. But we had a professor before I was ever here who made a deal and got permission. And so we actually teach a concepts of marketing course in-house. In addition, that they have one in the business school for their majors, but so that's kind of unique for us.
So somebody that majors in advertising can take a marketing concepting course or a marketing course.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Absolutely.
Because I did that, but I had to go into the business school class, like the business administration department.
Right.
Well.
That's how I had to do it way back in the day.
So. Yeah. So that is unique. And why do you think that's important to have a marketing class housed in the advertising track?
I have a hard time imagining getting an advertising major and not taking a marketing course.
Yes.
And part of that's a bias just because that's the way it was when I went to school. But a lot of it is to think more broadly than, just writing headlines. To think about, a lot of creative briefs start with the line, why are we advertising? And very often that's a business problem. So
yep.
Understanding marketing is really important.
Right. Because advertising is only a fourth of the marketing mix, I believe. And understanding the business problem to actually drive effectiveness it's important to remember that we're trying to sell for the most part. That's what they care about. There's a lot more beyond that as well. But if you can understand the client's needs, it's so crucial. And you might even win an Effie one day, which is probably one of the harder advertising awards. There's so many creative awards out there, but the Effie, especially clients want the damn Effie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. But if you look at who wins the Effies, a lot of it is really creative work.
Yeah.
Snickers, the whole "you're not yourself when you're hangry" campaign, that won an Effie. Mm-hmm. Dove's Real Beauty campaign has won Effie after Effie after Effie.
Yeah.
So
it drives back to the point, like they're not exclusive items. Effectiveness is not separate from creativity.
Right. In fact, there's some really good work that's been put together by WARC. Mm-hmm. And they have a thing they call the Creative Effectiveness Ladder. And it shows how the relationship between different types of effectiveness depending on how you're measuring, whether it's awareness or it's a sales or it's branding or whatever, and how advertising can contribute to that, and gives lots of good examples, most of it from Khan,
Yeah, it's super important, and people should go. All students should study those award-winning campaigns. Love the Work More, I think, is a free site that we use a lot. If you don't want to pay thousands of dollars to Cannes international festivals, it's so expensive to get those subscriptions. So that there's these two people that created a free platform to view all that work. I believe it's lovetheworkmore.com. So people should be all over that. But back to you though. So you've been teaching now for a good amount of time. A majority of this is your career. You've been teaching, and what do you teach specifically? I know classes are always changing, curriculum develops over time, but what are your most recent classes that are your bread and butter that you own at UNC?
I really only own one, and I'm not sure that "own's" the right word for it. It's just
nobody else touches this because they know Joe Bob's got this. Then no one will dare.
But the course that I teach most often is our advertising creative course, which originally was purely a copywriting course years ago, but it's expanded beyond that. And like we taught, I think in the last fall, we had 5 sections of that. It's gotten really popular. So we have a lot of adjuncts that teach it. We've got some folks who are creative directors at agencies that come in and teach it. There's another faculty member that teaches a section, but I've been teaching it pretty steadily now.
And what's the official name of the course?
Advertising Creative.
Gotcha. What are the expected learning outcomes for somebody that successfully completes the course? So
you have to remember, we don't have a specialization within the major.
Oh, that's actually a really good point. Like, we can even back it up a little bit. Like, what is the structure? Sorry, bad hosting, I guess. What does the structure of the program look like from start to finish, high level? If I enroll at UNC and I go to Chapel Hill, I live on campus, and I say, I want to study advertising as a major, what's the track look like there? Walk us through that high level.
Yeah. So our curriculum has a real emphasis on flexibility. Good. On you being able to kind of tailor your major. So for an advertising major in the School of Journalism and Media, everybody, regardless of what your major is, takes a basic news writing course. And I actually like that ad majors take that because it teaches them to write in a structured way, and to write briefly.
Clearly. Yeah. What is that old term? It's like, say it straight and then say it great.
Yeah.
Just clear. What are the facts? Get it to, and then also, I don't know if they teach like what's newsworthy. Like that's super helpful. PR, but also when creatives are concepting, they're thinking about the headline. They should be thinking about what will the headline say about this amazing creative work. So if they can understand what's newsly, what's timely, what's relevant, what's effective, and from a journalism sense, that's super crucial. So I like that they start off with a news writing angle, and you guys are historically known for a great journalism school. And I know you guys have a pretty good PR aspect as well. What's the one that wins like consecutively? What's the program?
The journalism programs won the Hearst National Championship
like every year.
7 out of the last 8 years, I think.
Yeah,
they're just awesome.
So that was a journal. Okay, so that makes sense. You have that journalism backbone there. So then what happens?
Right. So in terms of the advertising major, there are only 2 courses that are everybody has to take courses.
Mandatories. What are those?
One is a Principles of Advertising and Public Relations. We actually put the 2. We used to have 2 separate principles courses, but we put them together into one course. And the argument there is twofold. One is a lot of students at that point don't really know if they want to go PR versus advertising. And so they get a good taste of both.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, I mean, just look at the work that's being done now. So much of it is a crossover. It's a mixture. It has very strong PR components in addition to the traditional advertising stuff. So it's really important for those students to know. And then the other course that everybody in the ed sequence has to take is a research course, specifically for advertising and PR majors. So they learn
research fundamentals, audience analysis.
Yeah, and they learn it quite broadly, but I think a lot of the instructors, what they really focus on more than anything else is being able to understand research, because most research we hire a company to do it, and we have to be able to read it and see.
No, that's a great.
Do they do it well? So
no, and even internal research, like I do a lot in my company, like just studying email rate and like employee retention surveys. I think that is so crucial, just in other aspects as well. Like you need to have that backbone, that structure to analyze those results for sure.
Then after that, in terms of advertising courses, it's much more flexible. There are different levels, like you have to take 2 courses at this level and 2 courses at this level, or stuff like that. Everybody has to take a capstone course, but we have multiple ones that count. And so you can kind of structure your program to fit what you're most interested in, what you want to do. And I give you a kind of example of something that just happened recently. I have a new colleague who comes from industry and was talking with someone who was interested in coming to Chapel Hill as a student and is interested in creative. And so he asked me, Joe Bob, what courses do we have that someone who has an interest in creative would have to take?
The age-old question for undergraduate advertising education.
Yeah, and so I've pulled out the catalog and started going through it. And I didn't realize we had that many courses that fit in that description. Now, some of them are pretty specialized. Like we have a program in fashion marketing, a couple of courses, but it's highly creative. I mean, a lot of experiential stuff,
innovative,
a lot of product design. I mean, it's really cool. And you and I talked several weeks ago. We're just added this semester an official portfolio course.
There you go.
Which I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes.
Are you teaching that?
No, we've got a guy named Mitch Bennett. He's a creative director at Baldwin. And he used to teach at one of the portfolio schools. Like I want to say it was Circus, but I'm not absolutely certain. And he taught a course like this there. He's been at a whole bunch of really good agencies. He's won a lot of awards.
That's really impressive. I think you have. So what I'm understanding, you start off with that journalism writing clear, understanding what's newsworthy, and then it gets into those mandatories, which is the research is mandatory, you said, and then the other one was like the PR advertising combo, like intro principles, as well, principles.
Yeah,
and then you have these opportunities to specialize, these electives that you can take to by the time I would imagine whoever's teaching that principal course for advertising and PR, that they should show students the potential routes to go. And then the students should be like, okay, I know I want to be a copywriter. And now that I know that from this principal course, that I can take these XYZ electives to make me a better copywriter. And then you have the capstone where it comes back together full circle, where then you'll get people in a room. What's the capstone then? Like, I'm assuming it's like a client brief, like a real client or group project work.
We have a couple of courses that count as a capstone. We've got one that's actually crosses over into the journalism side as well. It's called Media Hub, where they actually are producing stories, but advertising and PR majors can take it as a capstone because they have to promote those stories
I
to
like
news
that.
outlets.
That's great.
So it's really cool. We've got the traditional campaigns course, which is, typically a client that everyone in the class works on, usually in teams. Sometimes it's a local client, sometimes it's a bigger client. We have one that's specifically devoted to social marketing.
I've never heard of these multiple capstones either, so that's something unique.
Well, when you have this many majors, everybody doesn't want to do the same thing, right? And so it really is. It all boils back down to that idea of being really flexible. And then so the other course that I teach is one of the capstones, and we call it Advanced Advertising Campaigns. It's the National Student Advertising Competition class. So
there it is. Yeah. And let me pull up a quote here from one of your past students who broke into advertising, who I've been talking with. You might be able to guess his name from our previous conversation. Joe Bob told us he'd shave his head if we won nationals in the National Student Advertising Competition. Is that true?
Actually, I told them I'd let them shave it.
Oh, did I misread? No. Wow, even better.
That's so when I interviewed for this job, I had long hair.
Yeah. It's still pretty long. Let me see right now. Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, it's pretty long. I can do a pretty good ponytail with. But anyway, at some point before I actually started the job, I think it was because it was summer in West Texas, I shaved my head. And nice. I did that for years. And it really kind of, I call it the Michael Jordan look since I was coming to UNC. But then one morning I cut myself pretty badly shaving my head, and I said, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. And I started growing it back out. And so now it's back out. And but yeah, I did say that.
I like that. What else did you say here about the NSAC competition? Instead of a final exam, he takes the class out for food and drinks. Sorry if I exposed you there, but if everybody that knows, you're submitting a book, usually a lot of pages that we don't actually see in advertising. I won't comment on that, but it's like a really dense campaign, fully developed strategy, research, analysis. That's like 100 pages usually. I don't know if it is anymore, but
actually they've gotten it down to 12.
Thank the Lord. That's amazing. So 12 pages, and then they submit that, and then you're done. So that makes sense. You take them out for a drink, and that's actually really similar to what the world advertising industry works. Like when you wrap up a campaign, you go celebrate.
Yeah, this isn't a tradition that, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and what happens in a course like this is you get to know this particular group of students better than most, because you typically spend more time with them.
Yeah.
You spend a lot more time with feedback and workshopping and
you get close with them. And
yeah. And a lot of, because they're seniors, you're also helping with job hunting stuff. And it becomes kind of like a family. I had one student one time say this was the group project that you actually wanted to go to meetings for. And it's
meaningful. They need to do that. Yeah, I love that. I love that, and it's such a great learning experience. I truly feel that students, like, if you just go to the class and just do the bare minimum, I mean, maybe at UNC you'll be fine, but like, you need to do the extra work, and you need to get involved, whether that's working on your portfolio on the side or doing these competitions or the Crowbar Awards, which I don't have to plug. That's our own award show, but you need to do a little bit of extra work as an undergrad to really stand out, because you're competing against portfolios of people at a portfolio school that are spending big dollars and spending 2 years on it. You're going up against those people in the job market. So if you can motivate your students like you have and tell those funny stories and connect with them and create meaningful work with your students, that's what's going to get them jobs. Just like the person, John, who told me about these quotes, he got a job at BBDO, and I'm sure it's because he put in extra work with you.
Yeah, he put in a lot of extra work.
Yeah, it's not easy. That's why we call it breaking and entering. It feels like you're pulling off a crime.
Yeah.
I like it. So you'll teach that so that's considered a capstone. That's advanced creative. I want to be in that class. That sounds really, really fun.
They don't allow graduate students anymore. They used to, but they don't anymore.
And your wife also is a professor at UNC, I read here.
Yes.
What does she teach?
She's officially in the journalism sequence. So in fact, her favorite course to teach is the news writing course. She's the best writers I've ever known. So
you're telling me if I enrolled, if somebody enrolls in the advertising track, they'll have your wife, Mrs. Hester,
Dr. Gibson.
Dr. Gibson. Pretty close. I tried. I'm trying here. So they'll have Dr. Gibson their first class, and they might have you, Professor Hester.
It has happened.
As their final class. And then who do they like better?
Oh, always her. So
that's good.
You mentioned John. He had her for media ethics, I believe. I think.
Can't escape you two.
Yeah.
That's good. That's amazing. And you love Vegas.
That's I
mean, who doesn't? Who doesn't? I've never been, but are there any good ad agencies over in Vegas?
I think
I have not interviewed anybody in 190 episodes that is based in Vegas. Any agencies? I would imagine there's probably sports marketing, sports books, and like those types of agencies that should pop up. Maybe like DraftKings. There's probably a hub there.
It seems like the agency that did the What Happens in Vegas Stays in Vegas line, was local.
Okay,
but that's just one of those things that floated in my head. I don't.
Yeah, I mean that would make sense, but who knows? Like other states will do tourism campaigns. Like other agencies in different states will do that too. But who knows? We can all go and do a little homework. But I want to get also to what you talked about prior to this interview. You mentioned finding creative resources is something that you're passionate about beyond the basics, right? We know the fundamentals. Like if you're a basketball player, you got to be good at dribbling and you got to be good at layups. And dribbling and layups for advertising resources are Ad Age, Ad Week, and communication arts. Is that correct?
Pretty much.
Yes. And now if you're doing that, that's great. You got to know those. But what's beyond? What are some of those creative resources beyond Ad Age and Ad Week and CA annuals?
Part of this is driven because that's all I had when I was coming up.
Yeah.
Right? I had the Wall Street Journal also, so because they usually covered marketing and advertising pretty well. But now, if let's say I'll pick on CA because I love CA. Okay, I used to have a stack 7 foot high in my office. But anyway, if you look through that work, you get to see the work, you see everyone who was involved, and you may have a little blurb, a couple of sentences about, why they did it, or maybe
context.
But now, especially with all the sites out there that cover this industry, and especially I love sites that are not from the United States, Contagious and Campaign, and LBD and all those. A lot of those folks go beyond, presenting the press release that the agency or the client sent out saying we've got this new campaign. They go and they talk to the CD. They go and talk to the planner, and you can find out so much more about what the thinking was behind the work And if you're trying to do that kind of work, you need to know that.
Let me introduce you to Ben Conway at Little Black Book. He's one of the lead writers, and Addison Capper. I'm very close with them. So I want to make a connection for you, get you featured as well, do a little PR for you or your program. No, seriously, they would love to do it, especially if you're a fan. Like, I could see the article now, like how UNC Professor Hester is helping his students with LBB, something along those lines. There's a story they would like to talk to you. So I'll make that intro after this. But I think LBB is great. I also recommend Muse by Clio.
Yeah.
It's a free source. A lot of these have paywalls, and even with Ad Age and Adweek, you have student discounts as well. So if you're a current student, or even when you graduate, you still have your .edu for a couple of years. It's a little life hack. You can use that and get a discount at these. Or if you're really smart, you can just call up the help hotline and just be like, "Hey, can I get this for free? I'm a student," and they will probably just say sure, and they'll send you everything you want. Just a little life hack.
I'll throw in another plug for Muse by Clio. They've got a section called Tagline, which is the podcast.
Hey, no promoting other podcasts.
Hey,
here, Joe Bob.
I'm sorry.
No, it's the best podcast. Tim Nutt is amazing.
Great for
Tim's not there anymore, though.
Instead of reading, yeah, I know. I wonder if they're going to continue it.
He's at Ad Age. I don't think that's going to get picked back up. It is the best advertising podcast out there. Absolutely. Describing the campaigns, getting the different perspectives behind it. All the famous campaigns, the Darth Vader, the Super Bowl Darth Vader with the car company. I forgot which one of that was. Dos Equis. I mean, there are so many great ones that are so detailed. Background, the stories behind it. It is really incredible. It makes me a little jealous though, because advertising has evolved since like the early 2000s. It's just ever evolving. Like the processes change, but the fundamentals are there on like defending good ideas and what it takes to really preserve it and sell it and be persistent. There's some really good lessons in that podcast as well.
Yeah, they also tend to go a lot into the things that happen in terms of producing work.
Yeah, all the
all
the mistakes, and like a bear was on set for one of them. I forgot which one. I remember listening to.
And students love that format.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm starting to look for more and more videos and podcasts that I can assign instead of reading. Because
assign this one.
I'm going to.
Heck yeah. So what else do you want to tell your students listening then? Let's imagine this then. Students are across the country are tuning in to this right now. Joe Bob, what do you want to tell them? You've mentioned also independent study, credit or not, for portfolio development. How do you approach that process? Independent study. Now, UNC is a great school. There's probably, you guys could probably bend things around. Not every institution might be like that, but what do you recommend about this?
Well, I can give you a little background. We used to have a portfolio class, and this is going way back. And then when portfolio schools started popping up left and right, the person who was teaching that class decided to pivot, that couldn't really compete with that. And so that class went away. And so then what happened is, if somebody really wants to be an art director or copywriter and really wants to work on a portfolio, they've only got a couple of choices. They can try to do it on their own, which is very difficult. They can find a partner and try to do it together. That's a little better.
Yep.
They can work with a professor outside of class, or even a connection they've made during an internship. It doesn't necessarily have to be an academic.
Right.
Or most universities have a course number designated for faculty called an independent study. And it's typically designed for one of two things: either for a student to pursue a particular line of study that we just don't have a class for.
Yeah.
or if because of circumstances they can't take a particular class, but they really want that knowledge, and so sometimes you can work on that. That one we don't use too much. So we've done that a good bit. There are a number of us who've done that with students, and it typically works. Like I did one this last spring. The 2 students came and met with me every Wednesday afternoon, and they'd show up and pitch me stuff, and I'd critique it, and we work through, what do we need to do next? What are you going to have for me next week?
Yeah.
And they'd go off and work, and come back, and we do it all over again.
That's incredible.
And
for credit or not, you're saying you should entertain this.
Well, these students took it for credit.
Good. Do that. That's the preferred route. Yeah. If you can get credit for it and develop a strong portfolio. Absolutely. A couple campaigns here and there, direct feedback. I always say that it's better to go with 1 to 2 people and be consistent with them, show them the work, get back with not everybody's free. Be cognizant that if you're talking to somebody in the agency world, that they're going to be busy, super busy. But instead of just shotgunning your work or your unfinished portfolio out and looking for any advice and not taking any of it and just trying to get eyes on it when it's not the terrible route to go. Just like job searching, just like when you're applying to colleges, it's better to be focused. I always say shoot with a rifle, not a shotgun, right?
Yeah.
Be pointed. So I think that when you have that built-in system with the same professor, you're consistently checking in. That sounds perfect to me.
Yeah. And, some people can't do that because we have a limit on how many hours you can take, or because of their schedule.
But if you can work it and you can talk with your academic advisor and talk with the professor, there might be a workaround.
One thing I've done in particular is I've had a couple of students who were in that situation. And so we just pared it down, and we didn't meet every week. We met every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And not for as long. Yeah. So it didn't, eat too much into my schedule, and it was more convenient for them. And that,
it worked out.
That's not ideal, but it does work.
But you have to be a creative solution. So,
sure.
All right, Joe Bob, what's the final piece of advice that you have for the listeners out there? We covered a lot about the program, about you and your wife and your love, that you would shave your head and what you do. Last piece of advice here. What would you want your listeners to take away?
I'm assuming my listeners are students.
Yeah, our audience is aspiring advertisers. Yes. This
is an observation from 30-something years of doing this.
There we go. Let's hear it.
The students who are the most successful career-wise, even if they don't go into advertising, and we have a number of them that they go through our program and they actually do something else. The students who tend to be the most successful are the ones who really knew what they wanted to do fairly early.
Yeah.
And were able to focus.
I love that.
They weren't just scattering around. They weren't just taking courses just for the heck of it.
Joe Bob, I love that advice. Every time somebody calls me, I immediately go, what do you want to do? What is the role that you want when you graduate or transition to? And when they can tell me confidently, I want to be an art director at a large agency. Great. Now we can work backwards. We can just clear out every distraction and figure out how to get there. When people don't know and they give me, well, I can write and I'm an art director and I want to be a creative director and I like to do a blog and journalism. Terrible. I'm glad you have a lot of passions, but if you're as a recruiter, as somebody that's hired people and you've seen this, you need to be focused. And it tells me that you're not very good at all those things because you can't be. Maybe down at the end of your career, you could be a great writer, great art director, but somebody that's 22 years old, maybe you're inherently gifted. I highly doubt that you're amazing at all these different things. So I need to know right away that what you want to do. So I think that's perfect advice. And I have those conversations, talk with professors, take quizzes, Creative Ladder, like we talked about, not sponsored, just a really great platform. It's a really great quiz. It's like 2 minutes. It tells you like what your ideal creative career would be. So I love that, Joe Bob. How can people connect with you if they have any other questions for you? Want to learn about? They want to transfer over to Chapel Hill, take your class. What's the best way?
I'm pretty easy. Email or LinkedIn. It's a name like Joe Bob Hester. You're not gonna. Somebody else isn't gonna pop up.
And we'll put the LinkedIn down below in the show notes. But Joe Bob, I really, really appreciate you, and I hope we can work more in the future.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
You're the best. All right. Thank you again. Take care.